user group. We're quite excited to start this off. So this is a community drivers Tableau user group, and you'll hear more about that as we go on through. So we have three of us running this today: Amy, Charlotte, and myself, Neil. Just to start with the sort of the house rules. Obviously, this is virtual, so they're a bit different to usual. Usually, your house rules are things like we're not expecting a fire alarm, and there are the toilets. But if you don't know where your toilets are in your own home, I can't really help you. And if the fire alarm goes off, then check that your kids haven't just burnt the toast. So really the only sort of house rules that I need to tell you are, not really. If you want to ask us questions, then try and use the Q&A. And you can always chat amongst yourselves and to us as well using the chat. But the Q&A is probably the best one to get hold of us. And also to let you know that this is going to be recorded. So it's recorded from now through to the end, which means you'll be able to obviously to watch this afterwards as well. Okay, I may as well quickly just go through this as well. This is our agenda. So you can see we're just sort of going to start with a welcome. We're going to have some introductions, so we'll just let you know about the three of us. But we'll also sort of try and do a little bit of introductions among ourselves as well. Find out a bit more about all of us, and you find out more about that. Then we've got a presentation to do with building a data culture, the importance of community. So that'll be back to me for that. Our Q&A discussion, as much time as we like really for questions and answers as a result of that. And also just to sort of find out a bit more about what you might think would be really good for future meetups like this. And then that doesn't say close up, that means we will close up at just before the hour. Okay, does anyone want to take this, or I can just sort of explain a little bit about this as well? So the community drivers, thank you, Charlotte, for coming up with these sort of 3 bullet points, really, which just sort of sum up why we wanted to set this up. So if you love promoting data decision-making, if you really want to sort of drive data-driven adoption at your company, and if you're just sort of wondering about data culture in your organization, then that's what this user group is about. So we're very much sort of for people who are the community drivers, hence the car, in the organizations. Those of you who perhaps are really those who try and follow and instigate Tableau's blueprint. All of you really who are just sort of trying to embed that data culture, the evangelists, as I like to call myself. So I'm sure we've got plenty of you here. We're really sort of looking forward to finding out who's here. We want to make it, we don't want these to always be, you turn up to a presentation, we do some, we present things and then you go and then you come to the next one. We want this to be a group where we can all learn from each other. We've started this up, 3 of us who all do sort of similar roles but in different companies within the UK, so we can learn from each other. And we want to just sort of open that group up a lot more, just so that we can find out hints and tips and any kind of advice just from other people who are doing a similar role, or people who want to learn and find out a little bit more about that. All right, so who are we? This is the 3 of us, so over to you, Charlotte.
Hiya, yeah, so I'm Charlotte. I love kind of all things data, and specifically within that, business intelligence and visualization. So they're really the report building and the kind of what I think is a real value add part of the kind of data landscape. And I also, within that, love community and adoption. So working out how to get people that might not think data is for them or data is about them, to really get them engaged and thinking how we can help them make differences and make sure that the reports that we spend time and effort and, lots of love and attention goes into really reap the benefits across organizations. So I've been working in BI ever since I finished uni, so about 4 years now. I used to, up until last May, I worked for a consultancy based in Chesterfield. So I lived in Sheffield, so up north, before I relocated back down to London, which is where I'm from originally. And now I work for Lloyds Banking Group. My main focus, kind of day to day, is looking after our kind of data platforms and how we make sure people have contact with them, and also looking at building something we call a data marketplace, our BI marketplace, like a one-stop shop for all things data. But on top of that, I spend a lot of time looking after the BI community within Lloyds, which is kind of where I see our data kind of marketplace really bringing the most benefit to users and bringing them all together. So it's kind of my two passions in one place, and I'm just looking forward to learning more about what other people are doing on that, which is why I kind of reached out to Neil and Amy to get this thing set up. So I guess with that, I'll hand over to you, Neil.
Yes, over to me again. So my name's Neil. Technically I'm a BI engineer at Groupon, but as I said, I don't like that title. Can I be called something else? Can I be called an evangelist? So I called myself a Tableau consultant evangelist. And after I got a few sort of strange connection requests on LinkedIn from totally different kind of evangelists, I still settled on that because it's sort of, it's basically what I am. Really, I don't get involved too much in the sort of day-to-day analysis of our figures. We've got a very talented team of analysts at Groupon to do that, but it's my job just to essentially to educate and evangelize and to do all the kind of things that we're talking about in this user group. So to be involved in internal community building, just to sort of try and help drive that data-driven culture. So that's my role at Groupon. I'm also both an ambassador and a Zen master for Tableau. As I often sort of say, it means I'm good, but not that good. It just basically means that I'm keen. It means that I love what I do, and I love to go out and I love to talk about it, and I love to get involved. So I first got in touch with Charlotte just earlier this year, when Charlotte did an amazing talk at one of the Tableau days. I thought, this is somebody who's doing a similar job to me and is doing it very successfully. Let's sort of try and get together and find out what we can share and what I can gain from that. So that's been a great connection, and that's grown to finding out about thoughts of setting up this user group as well. And so we're going to take it from there. Over to you, Amy.
Yep. So I'm Amy. I am an analytics program lead at Jaguar Land Rover. I have been here for the last 3 years now, since graduating university. And I was lucky enough to join a team that was very newly set up. So the whole team was only formed in 2016. And as such, we had a program pod set up, which had a focus on analytics in the wider business. And how to drive analytics adoption and analytics transformation. So from the very start of my analytics career, I've had a community focus and rotated around different areas of the team throughout the graduate scheme, but quite early on settled on the program and on the community aspect of it. So I'm really excited to start this community drivers user group, to get to know lots more people and learn from each other, share my experiences through what we've been doing, and hope that we can kind of transform businesses around the world.
Okay. Now this next slide, I will hand over to Charlotte shortly. What we'd like to do is go to www.menti.com, which some of you might know, some of you it might be new to you. Basically, that's just a little interactive app on your phones. So you can go to that and type in that number when prompted. So you can do that as well. And we've just got some interesting and fun kind of questions to find out a bit more about people, about who we've got, and what you might be interested in. So I'll let you take over there.
Hopefully you can see my screen.
Yeah, now I have a feeling I might have put the wrong number up there. Yes, it ends in 22, so make sure you've got the right
So the code should just be at the top of the screen. So 579222. And if you press the little Batman signature, that'll help us know that you've managed to get in, okay? Just give it another minute for a few more people to connect through. But yes, 579222 and just www.menti.com should be self-explanatory from that point on. Cool. You can see those numbers going up. So what I will do is I will open the first question. The code will stay on your screen. So if you haven't already managed to get it open, you're still looking for your phone, you'll be able to see it at the top, menti.com and then 579222. So the very first question we wanted to find out about is where in the UK you are based, or the city outside of the UK, so where you're based at all, for that matter. So if you just type in your answer, you should start to see them coming up on the screen. We want to know more about you all, but sadly the kind of virtual world means that sometimes we can't be as connected as we would like. So that's why we are trying to kind of get to know you through here. But this is really interesting, seeing how many people are joining us from Europe, which is exciting. So maybe Amy's attempt to take over Tableau around the world will come true.
It's going to happen.
Yeah, we've got Hyderabad there as well. So we're across 2 continents.
Someone from Florida.
I'm from Alfreton, and I feel like I've got the least exotic place there.
Yeah, I'm feeling very basic, filling that London blurb in the middle. Cool, so we've still got a few answers coming in, so we'll leave this one another minute and then move on to the next one. So if we go on from here, the next question we wanted to know is what you are binging on streaming platforms. This was originally Netflix, but apparently that wasn't inclusive enough, so any streaming platforms will be supported. You also will have the opportunity to submit more than one on this as well, so once you've done one, we can go.
Someone just wrote all.
I've completed Netflix.
Yeah. I think it's sized by number of answers, isn't it? So we've obviously got the last answer is the most popular one.
Yeah, clearly lots of sports fans. I've heard really good things. I haven't actually watched it myself though. It is on my list.
Tableau.
Is that just YouTube? All Tableau channels?
No, I think that's just Caroline answering it as many times as she can.
Reliving conference via YouTube. Awesome. So we've still got a few more coming in. I don't want to stop because I feel like I haven't watched most of these, so I need to get watching. I mean, streaming football is very impressive because I thought that was only live. But what do I know?
Not at the moment it isn't.
Yeah, true. Unless you're in Germany.
True.
Cool. So finally, who do you work for? That was a terrible typo on my behalf.
I was going to say.
The embarrassment.
Didn't update with the changing slide, so I have now submitted my company to the Netflix.
You've been binging on Jaguar Land Rover.
I know. Someone worked at Disney. It could have been binging Disney. That would have worked.
Yeah. Cool. And what we can do is we are able to then use this in the future to kind of work out what people might be interested in. So we really want to make this community user group really about this community in itself. And for example, Menti is something I use a lot within our community. I've been extolling the virtues to Neil and Amy earlier today about finding out what people are interested in, and a good way of kind of looking back at presentations you've done in the past and thinking, oh, actually we could share more in these kind of areas. So these answers will be beneficial. It's not just for filling time for now. Cool. So we move on to the next slide. So this is what industry you work in. This is kind of a really brief, I was kind of typing the ones that I could think of, but I'm sure others probably going to absolutely grow like mad as I've invariably missed out some really key ones. Cool. And then does your organisation have a dedicated community resource?
Dedicated as in it's part of your role or it's your full-time role?
I guess it's whatever you kind of, how you would view it. Do you view it as being dedicated or not? I guess it's not dedicated as in like they've got the passion for it. Dedicated is kind of technically their role.
Yeah.
That's interesting because it's like really quite evenly split actually.
Yeah.
Great use of the donut chart. I was a bit worried it might look a bit rubbish, but when it's split so perfectly, clearly was planning that. That's interesting. I guess that's something that we're going to maybe explore more in future sessions. Is that kind of is there such thing as a dedicated community person, or are there lots of different community people coming together? I think that'd be good to get your guys' understandings and ideas around those, because it's something that I personally question quite a lot. And then, have you completed the Community Champions badge? So on the Tableau e-learning path, there's the different pathfinders you can do, and one of them is the Community Champions. And I think when we were looking at organising these sessions, we spoke briefly about if that badge was something that we thought people would do, or if it would align completely with this and we could use those as materials. So knowing how many of you have kind of done it before shows us if that's the right kind of pitching at the right levels. Neil and Amy, feel free to pitch in if you agree or disagree with what I'm kind of rambling on.
I agree. I was too busy pressing obviously on my phone because it's one of the first things that I did when I saw the e-learning was free. So.
Yes, definitely made the most of the free e-learning. I think.
And I would certainly recommend it for whether you have the role or whether you're interested.
Yes. And then finally, what does community mean for you? So there's 3 options on your phone, or 3 boxes for you to type, but feel free to resubmit. You should be able to add more than 3 words if lots of words come to you.
We should definitely get a screen grab of this word.
Yeah, I'm able to like output them as well, so we can see them all in the future. But yeah, I think the fact that support and sharing are so large. That's kind of what I said one of those words. I said sharing personally, but that's something that I really associate with community.
The secret sauce. I like that.
Signal.
cool. I also love the word aligned that somebody's used. I think that's really clever and true. Free swag feels.
Can I actually say that this will amaze you? It wasn't me who put that.
Yeah, it's funny because sometimes with these you see someone puts a word and then everyone starts then just following the word that's been there, so that's what like helps it grow. So it's the ones you get right at the beginning that are really key, because that's before anyone's had their like ideas swamped by seeing what other people put. But that's really interesting. I almost don't want to stop it because there's so many great ones coming in, but you should still be able to update it even once I've moved off. So Amy, you can put Jaguar Land Rover again if you are really feeling the community passion. But that's kind of enough Menti for now. So we've got a few more questions later on, but right now I think it's probably best that we go into Neil's presentation, and then we'll come back to Menti at the end to kind of look at how we found today and also some ideas for the future, I guess. So if you want to take over.
Okay. Okay, so can you all see the right screen now?
Yes.
Okay, that's a yes. All right then, so I'm going to talk about building a community of excellence. Now I've been fortunate enough to give this presentation twice over the last couple of weeks, so this will be the third time. I just contracted a little bit. Now, one of the great things is, in the virtual environment that we're at, I've been able to give this to a conference in Tbilisi, Georgia, a conference in London, and now a virtual conference all around Europe, and all three of them from my back garden here. So it's great to be able to sort of repeat this and get the message out there. So I'm going to talk about building a community of excellence and why it's important to a strong data culture. And really what I'm going to talk about is all here in this title slide. So I'm going to start by sort of talking about data culture and some ideas of how we define that. And then I'm going to talk about different types of community and how we can sort of build that to drive data culture. But I'm going to start by talking about this guy. I'm actually going to talk less about this than normal because you've had the introduction and you kind of know who I am. So I've just sort of left in one slide about me there just to say, hello, this is me. This is what I look like without a lockdown lack of haircut. And it just sort of signifies that I love to be part of the community. I love to get out and talk about Tableau and data visualization. So often I'm out talking about design and things like that, but I'm equally passionate about building up data communities, and that's what I also like to talk about. Also, this was a picture of me stroking a very large, imaginary, invisible dog. I actually don't know what I was doing on that particular action shot, but I was obviously having fun. All right, so essentially, if I was able to ask you, and this time I actually know a little bit more about you as audience, so I know which companies you come from. But I would say, show of hands, who thinks they work in a company that uses data? And I would expect probably 90, 100% of people to put their hand up. And I would really say every company is a data company. Every company wants to use data that they have in their organization, and it's really important, therefore, that you consider companies and you probably want them to become data driven. And so that's what this is all about. So therefore, every company would probably want to strive to be a data driven company. So I said we're going to talk about data culture, because data culture is really what we might think of in underlying a data-driven company. But to start with, what is the actual definition of the word culture? This is actually from a place called Simple Wikipedia, which is great for an old mathematician like me. It sort of explains things in simple words. And you might think of culture as, I don't know, opera, fine art, philosophy, something like that. But really that's not so much what culture means. That the root of the word culture is like horticulture or cultivation. It means growing. So it's the opposite of genetics, which is passed on by heredity. It's all about what's been passed on, integrated knowledge, that's habits and behavior which have been passed on through the generations. So gives me an excuse to talk about one of my other passions. We've got great apes here. This is an orangutan in Nauru Menteng, who's learned how to use a spear to hunt for fish. And when we talk about that, we talk about great ape culture. And if I think of that, that actually makes it easier to understand what culture is. So great ape culture isn't a chimpanzee going to the opera or a gorilla sort of talking about philosophy. It means what have great apes learned over the generations, and what have they passed down through learned behavior. And that's what we think of when we talk about culture, learned behavior. So if we kind of add that up together and we sort of extrapolate that to data culture, we think of the collective behaviors and beliefs of values of people who value, practice and encourage use of data to improve decision making. So something that becomes a way of life. If I just sort of highlight that, it's the people who value, practice and encourage use of data. So it's the people we think of when we talk about community. I didn't notice actually, but I'm sure probably some people put people in that word cloud we saw just then. That's what I think of in community. And so what we want to talk about or think about is how can we build a community of these people? And that will be what then builds the data culture. So when I'm giving this talk, I've actually given this talk in sort of 2 Tableau agnostic companies. So I talk about building a data culture, whether you're using Tableau or not. You might be using something completely different, Power BI or something like that. Or even in Groupon, we talk about an analytics culture because we're thinking about Tableau, but we're also talking about the other tools that make analysts. But this slide and this work and the background behind my my talk does all come from Tableau. It actually comes from the data culture element of their website there. Tableau, I think they researched over 1,000 of their customers to find out what do you think helps make a data-driven company. What are the elements that you think fosters a data culture? And these are the 5 things that the Tableau then were able to get from those results. And I mean, essentially, these they can represent foundational changes. It's not easy. It's something that can take effort. You won't necessarily find this happens day to day unless you work on it. So that's why I personally think that community role that we spoke about, whether it's dedicated official or whether it's not, is a moot point. But if you have those people, and whether it's you here today, these are the people who can really sort of use this blueprint with a small b or a capital B, if you like, to try and drive that data culture. So I'm just going to talk about communities, internal and external, probably mostly internal. And these are the 5 pillars that Tableau mentioned, so I'll just sort of mention them again. I'm actually going to cheat a bit and reorder them like that. It's not necessarily a linear process, so you can talk about them in any order, and you need to do all of these things. But from a community point of view, building upwards, it's kind of easier to sort of focus on some of these at the top as I've reordered them. So how can you develop talent in your organization? There are many ways that you might want to do that. I mean, here are just a few. Training. You might be, certainly from a community point of view, responsible for delivering training. That might be classroom sessions traditionally, or these days it might be more likely to be webinar sessions. And these are great for going through curricular or going through actual sort of technical training. I mentioned workshops as well, because I mean, often it's not just the technical training, how to do Tableau, how to do Desktop One. There are other things that you might want to build up your community. So whether that's sort of more of the softer skills, or whether that's some of the best practices as well, it's important to have those kind of things. You might have self-service training. So rather than expecting people to attend formal training, which they may opt into, or you may require that they do, you might have the opportunity to get as many resources as you can and put them on a learning management system. So you can have your team able to take self-service training on the bits they feel that they need to, or the bits that they want to learn later. Tableau do great system, things like a skills belt for that, which allows people to go through level after level and work to different sort of certifications there. And I put rewards. You'll find you might find sort of different elements of these community things as to whether you feel you've got executive buy-in. Have you got sort of a sponsor at the C-level, people who are really happy to back your building the community? Or you might feel you don't have that so much, and you're sort of building up from the bottom a little bit more. So, I mean, rewards in the former case, it might be that you can sort of reward success in training with things like certification, or the ability to take exams, or ability to attend conference, that kind of thing. Or it might be that you've got sort of smaller ways of recognition, but they're just as important. So maybe a difference in a badge or email signature, or stickers, or free swag, that kind of thing. Now, data culture, it fosters all these things. So it also fosters supporting sharing. And I think sharing was probably the biggest word that came up earlier in the word cloud, wasn't it? Some ways you can do this. Newsletters is something I found particularly successful where I work at Groupon. Sort of instigated a newsletter every couple of weeks. If you've got anything to say about what your team is doing, or what new opportunities you have, that's the time to share them. So new training opportunities, new events that you might be reporting back from, new versions of Tableau, anything like that that you can put in. It's a great opportunity to celebrate success as well. If somebody in one particular team has done a great dashboard, the sharing is so important, because very often you might find that you have different people who are not really talking to each other. They might be siloed groups. So anything that supports sharing across your organization, across your community, that really can help build that data community and that data culture. So I also mentioned intranet, portals, forums, that kind of thing. It's important to have some kind of central place, whether that's an intranet page or or a portal or something like that. Because if people know, whether they're in Hyderabad or Berlin or Chicago, if they know where to go in and find out what their training opportunities are, or find out what's going on, then that really can help bridge some of those gaps. Forums as well, it's good to have forums where people can ask questions, and they don't necessarily rely on you, your Centre of Excellence, or your experts, your evangelists, to always be there to answer those questions. If you can have something where people can answer each other's questions and they can engage with each other, then that's a really good way of accelerating that community building. Similarly, chat, messaging, it's amazing. There are so many ways that people can do that, and it's really ideal to be able to have something which everybody across that community does, so that you don't have all these people using one system, you don't have all these people using another system, whether it's email groups or Slack or anything like that. So just to try and get that company wide. So we spoke about fostering trust. I put shared events first here, because the more that you can, again, you might want to host an event, but if you can share that, if you can share that across teams and geographies, you then start to have the trust to be able to share your own work, or have other people share their ideas towards you. And that really helps with confidence in the community and empowerment as well. And once you get confidence and empowerment, actually, if you were to go back and see the slide I had earlier, Tableau, when they talk about confidence and empowerment, they're also talking about confidence in the data, as well as confidence in the community people who are going out and using that data. So that comes with really good support and data governance. So if you have all these things in place, you can really build confidence in your people, in your community, and also in the data that they're using. So all this I'm talking about a real sort of groundswell of community growth, and how this can then help to change mindset. Let's start again with an example here. External community projects. Many of you, I'm sure, will be familiar with some of the things that you can do from out-of-work projects to bring them in, whether that's makeover projects like Makeover Monday, or whether that's social good projects or workout projects, anything like that. There are so many different ways where you can encourage people to reach out of their comfort zones and reach out of their data sets that they're used to, just to get even more of that data-driven mindset. And this is where you may be meeting your executives coming back from the top. If you're driving this data-driven mindset, you can then start to try and lead conversations with stakeholders. It's not easy at all, and sometimes that's one of the hardest things to do. But once you have all this sort of community behind you and all the data-driven ideas, you can then start to help your stakeholders see and understand data. You can tell them, well, all right, I know you've kind of always had these tables, but we can do so much more, or we can produce this for you, but we think it'll be easier. It will help to answer your business questions more if we provide something in this manner. So having the community and having that changed mindset through all of these other things can really sort of help drive that as well. And finally, seeks commitment there. So with all these elements in place, you can really sort of help to build from the ground up. One more thing I put in there is about developing champions. And in fact, let's go on to see what an analytics champion, I was going to say see what it looks like. It doesn't have to look like this guy. This is just one particular champion. But if you can identify traits in the community of people who engage most fully, they can become your Tableau champions or your analytics champions within the community. And the great thing is they can then start to help do your job for you. If you've got someone in a particular team who has completed all the training, who's done really well, who's had the rewards, who's led internal workshops or user groups possibly, or been involved in peer reviews, anything like that, you can identify and reward analytics champions, and they can then sort of really build up the community for you. So what I've mentioned mostly, I'm aware I'm rushing through this, but what I've mentioned mostly is what you might consider internal communities. Just to talk about some external communities, and probably you guys, if you're all taking time away from your work to come and join a Tableau user group, then you'll be familiar with a lot of these. And I started to try and think of a list of all these things, whether it's software companies or user groups or websites or podcasts or anything. And then I took a look on the back of my laptop and realized I've actually, well, I thought I'd regressed to being a 14-year-old, but I mean, just all the things that you pick up, this is just this shows all the kind of different things that are out there. So there's magazines, podcasts, societies, all sorts of Tableau groups, and what else is there? Yeah, opportunity groups such and support group, Data Plus Women. There are just so many different ways that you can get involved, and most of these are still happening online as well. And this is where you can really sort of go that extra mile. I'm sort of supposed to plug Data Visualization Society here. I won't talk about it as much as I would in my full talk, but this is one example of a great new community, which if you haven't joined, I recommend you go to datavisualizationsociety.com. I'm so sorry I have to spell it with a Z. You can just sort of get past the wrong spelling there. Then you'll find that that's such a great resource for whether it's sort of a big community on there, or whether it's jobs or competitions, or said I wasn't going to talk about it much, but I've already said plenty about it. That's the slide is a way of visualizing all our first year of membership, but do check that out as one example of a great external community. And then, again, you guys are probably a bit more familiar with this. My heart always sinks when I see this, because I haven't stood that close to somebody in a long time. But this was, I think, in 2018, just to show, Tableau community is great. We all know it's it's such a great community if you can go to these external events as well. What I find particularly interesting there, I sometimes look for myself in here and I can just about see myself sort of hidden towards the back there. The chap that I stood next to and hidden behind, he actually became my boss about 6 months later. And that just goes to show that if you can share your passion for Tableau and data and community and find other people through the community and through these events, you can actually really take those connections further. And you can obviously sort of share and network those ideas as well, but it can be a further great opportunity for yourself as you build into the role. Here's my sort of high-tech sort of explanation that spoken about internal communities and external communities. You can't expect, if you're trying to drive your community up at your workplace, everybody to sort of to be like me, if you like. You're not going to expect everybody to do everything, to be part of all these events, and to want to sort of be the real sort of ambassador. But you can have that overlap. If you have if you are able to get those resources from the external community, bring them in, make sure that people know all the best websites to go to, the best blog posts, the best resources that tell you about all the latest upgrades and that kind of thing, then that's the overlap that you need. And then there's always great opportunities for people internally to go to these events, to listen to these podcasts or user groups, and just sort of make that connection there. Finally, I just wanted to, it's kind of the elephant in the room, isn't it, COVID-19. You might think, well, does that rule out everything I've said up to now? And no, it doesn't. All right, it rules out the big Tableau gathering, but it doesn't really rule out everything else. You just might have to think about what are the priorities of your company. So you might be going through a difficult time, you might be going through furloughs. You might have to think twice about, do I want to host that big event on that particular day or date? But once you've got past that, it's actually a better time than ever to rely on community, because people aren't sat next to each other at their desks anymore, or they aren't sort of having these chats. You want to be able to foster all these different ways to connect internally and drive your data community. So it's even more important to have these communication channels open, to have your Zoom chats, to have your internal user groups, things like that. And it also means events like this, user groups or conferences, because they're done online, it actually means you can kind of reach out further and even more globally, as we've shown in that earlier slide. So sometimes you might have to reconsider what you're doing, but it doesn't necessarily have to stop you doing things. You might do things in a different way. So just going to very quickly close on this slide, and you don't need to see it in great detail, but this was the summary of an internal event that we held a group on just a couple of weeks ago. And it was actually an event that I had never really had the opportunity to do when people were in the office, because we have too many different countries and offices. You can see them all there. But going online meant that we were actually, for the first time, able to bring all these people in together. And as well as that, just to show that if you're trying to engage people in a data community, then the best way to sort of report on success or things like that is in a data kind of way. So I've just sort of shown in the Tableau dashboard something which is really interesting to show who was on, who was off, what the different viewing figures were, and just sort of be able to show during the course of the day the overall sort of feedback. And this was something that was able to go all the way sort of up several levels up to the C level with great sort of feedback from them. So that's it. I think that might have been a little bit more than 20 minutes, so thank you if you listened to all of that. But just really want to move on from here and say, if you've got any questions or answers, well, if you've got any questions in particular, happy to answer them, or we're happy to just sort of throw it up into a sort of wider discussion for the last few minutes of this meeting, just to see what you might be interested in. Have we got any questions come through? I've just seen one question come through, which I'm going to try and answer. In a recent interview, I was asked this question: what and how would you do anything new if you'd been given control over Tableau product entirely? That's probably a difficult one. Obviously, I don't know the circumstances of your interview, so what your particular Tableau your particular sort of Tableau installation was. What I would say though is, and again, this alludes to something that we spoke to before, is to make sure that there is a community element, and very often that's within a centre of excellence. So there's a lot of great talks from people like Paul Manoop, who's on this call, or people like Simon and Fee, Simon Beaumont, Fee, Gordon have spoken about their centre of excellence models. We run a centre of excellence as well on a sort of smaller scale, and often that is where your community and your support will be. So no two are set up in the same way, and it all depends on your own sort of company, what works. But so in our case, we are a support department, and we are the people who engage and evangelize this side of the community. So we're still there to help. We can answer technical questions, we can look and work on dashboards, but we are also there just to be able to offer the training and to offer the community side of things. Now, I may be biased because it's the role that I do and it's the role that I love doing, but I do feel that having that that department or that group, however small, can really help everyone. And I think we got some kind of, without going into the situation group on too much, I really felt that we got the justification there, because in a difficult time where we had to let go of quite a lot of people across the organisation, our small team stayed completely intact. And we're not a revenue generating team, we're a support team. But the importance of having us there to help with training, to help with analysts, to help them through the difficult time, that really sort of was a nice justification to our roles.
We've got another question that's come in saying, how do you get engagement from colleagues over video questions? Often there's a lot of tumbleweed when you ask questions on a call. I think this is something that, I'm very familiar with this. We've had some, even just meetings with a small group of people where there's no eye contact with anybody, especially if they've got their cameras switched off. There can be a lot of awkward silences, but it's a new way of working, I guess.
Yeah, no, one thing I would say is that if a presentation is one thing, but if you're in any kind of meeting, always have your cameras on. I know not everybody kind of likes that, but it's just, you just have a little bit more confidence that people aren't sort of sat there on their phones or doing whatever. So if you can, that sort of drives engagement. In presentation mode like this, it can be difficult. I put in some belted jokes and I have no idea if people laughed or not. But yeah, joking aside, you do have to kind of accept that, take with trust that people are engaging with what you said. It is harder. Ideally, you would do these things face to face, and that's one thing that you do lose. But obviously, what you do gain is having that larger audience and having that more global audience sometimes. And hopefully the opt-in nature of it, that people have decided to come and be involved in your meeting, can help with that.
You just have to get used to being a radio presenter.
I suppose that's what it's like, isn't it? Yeah.
We've had another question that then says, how do I change my users' minds to go to forums and post their questions? They demand one-to-one time from me as we are a small group of users.
What we did, I answered in a typing, but I think it is beneficial for others. We point blank refused to answer questions unless they had been shared on an internal forum first. Or if we did answer it, we said, now you've got to go and post this so it can be shared with others. It's a bit difficult at first, but we found it really important to kind of growing our community. But I don't know if anyone's got anything.
The thing that we've done is we host internal Tableau Doctor sessions. So we only make ourselves available on a Wednesday morning. People have to book into a session. So if they do need or want one-on-one help, it's a bit, we can limit it to kind of control our time as well.
And that's a great answer from Charlotte, and it's something that I'm guilty of not doing, because it's one of the things that we find harder is getting that that forum involvement. As you're just setting it up, people might think if they put something there, they're not going to get an answer, so I'll just go straight to Neil or some of the other guys in my team. But I'm going to take that away from this, which is be a little bit firmer, insist on these things going through the forum, so that it eventually becomes that I almost said that new normal. That's a horrible phrase because we hear it so often in the news for different things. But yeah, I guess sometimes you have to be a little bit more forceful. So.
We've had one from Richard saying, I'm assuming presenters that you have your own internal Tableau sites / portals. Are you able to share what these look like and how much do your colleagues use them? I'm looking at starting one myself and wonder what platforms you're using for this. I'm wondering if this might be a good topic for the future, maybe, but a good one to kind of answer quickly now, thinking on my feet.
Yeah, no, I was going to suggest that I can definitely share our portal on something like this. So we just build it on SharePoint, which is our internal platform, but we can definitely pick that up as a future topic.
Yeah, ours is just built on a platform called Hive, which is not to be confused with the big data platform called Hive. It's a collaboration tool that's kind of used for pretty much all internal questions and answers. And if you want to know anything, it's usually community sourced by whatever, whether it be how to use WebEx on Hive in one form or another.
So our SharePoint, our portal is purely content that we've put up there. And then we have a Yammer group, which is just like a forum for asking and answering questions, which kind of sits alongside it. So the two of them is our Tableau online community.
Cool. I think we were going to go on to kind of a Menti area and seeing some more feedback and ideas for the future. And I guess that question sort of starts that. So maybe should we move on to that now?
Okay. So do you want to take over control there? Okay.
Yeah, I'll share my screen. If we get any other questions, we can address it at the end. You can still type. Cool. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
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 People are giving us love already. So same website as before, same code. If you've left it open, it should just refresh now, showing you that we are at this slide. I can see people are here by the thumbs up we're getting. So I will move to the first question, which is really about how did you find today's session? So this is a ranking option. You can rank them from 1 to 5 with, I think it shows you which one is the most, which answer is the most relevant to you. So yeah, with 5 being something you strongly agree with. Cool, so we can see those coming through. Obviously, other animals beyond dogs.
Yes, I don't have a dog.
This is it. We got fewer people with dogs.
While we're waiting for this to load, we've had another question come in that says, where should I start? I am aspiring to inspire people like you and become a community leader. Where should I start apart from working on building dashboards? Does anybody have any suggestions?
I can answer from my point of view, which is, I suppose, a lot of where I started, if you consider going back to my talk where I spoke about internal and external, a lot of where I started was some of these external things. So once I found out about things like Makeover Monday via Twitter and via makeovermonday.co.uk and some of these other ways that you could build your skills and your experience. I've worked in much smaller companies before, which didn't really have Tableau departments and things like that. So whilst learning Tableau for myself externally, if you like, I also found out a lot about Tableau community, a lot about events, and a lot about resources and things like that. So it did mean that once I found a role introducing internal communities, I was ideally placed, through what I did outside. I'd become an ambassador and Zen master. I was ideally placed to bring that sort of community enthusiasm, if you like, internally into the role. I'm not saying you necessarily have to go that far, but I would say, yes, sort of take inspiration from some of these kind of things. And as you say, start working on building dashboards, but also sort of find out, what else is out there, and that might really help.
I would say just taking the opportunity to say yes. I think that a lot of the reason the community works or starts is from someone kind of putting in a lot of effort and a lot of passion to get it off the ground. And to do that, it can take a lot of saying yes and just helping, but making sure that you're saying yes to the right things. So, for example, answering questions on a forum rather than one-to-one, and then kind of gathering a committee of people that you think are really super keen. And that's kind of where I think is a good place to start from the beginning, making sure you know the answers, and if you don't know them, you know where to find them from, being super helpful. I'm just going to move on to the question, but Amy, if you want to keep answering, just move the menu on phones.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think for me, our community started from the training material and the education resources for Tableau that we had, and sharing them amongst the community. And then from there, we were able to build up into running local events and then wider events later on.
So the question that we've said about getting social is we want to have somewhere where people can feel like they can get reach out to each other and talk. So if you've got any suggestions, because we weren't really sure what was the best way to do this, especially while we can't meet face to face, it'd be really good to see what you guys' ideas are, if you have any, and we can look to do something.
Is somebody just suggesting the park, or am I missing some social channel?
I think someone suggested we go to the park 2 meters apart from each other, or whatever the distance is in your own particular locality. That's good. LinkedIn is a popular idea.
Yeah. Cool. And then final one, as we are slightly short on time, was just a question on topics for the future. So we mentioned this, and we obviously spoke about doing a topic on internal portals, but if anyone has anything else they would really like to be covered, or any suggestions really about anything, here's the place to type them in. We'll use this to plan for the future. I love that dashboard at different management levels question. How to fight
Power what?
Rain date type group discussions.
How to become a Zen master. That's one for you, Neil.
That's your new topic, Neil.
Yikes.
Getting
exec buy-in, that's a really, really key one.
Yes, yeah. Because community is at all different levels, and a lot of the community activities that I think kind of you immediately think of is the low level is not the right phrase, but the people doing analytics on a day-to-day basis, and sometimes getting the senior support and engagement can be a challenge.
I love that one, engagement through gamification, because I know a lot of places do that and they're really successful. It's not something that I've got too involved with because I'm a little bit nervous about whether people would sort of take it up, but I think know your company, know your culture, and you know, I think I'd be really interested in having a discussion about that.
Data literacy training's coming up a couple of times as well. That's something that we've been talking about internally, but we haven't launched anything.
Either way, I feel like we've got loads of really, really good ideas from here. So I think we've definitely got something to use in the future. I was a bit worried we'd come back with nothing, but there's loads of topics that I'm really inspired by on here. And also if anyone's going to put an idea and they think actually that this is something that they could really help with, feel free to reach out for us, because, you know, we don't know everything, unfortunately. So it's really good to be able to kind of have different people collaborate on these as well.
Yes, thank you all very much. This is amazing. It's going to be plenty to do and think about.
How to make data a priority. Can't read the rest of it, it's under something.
How to reward your community with zero budget. Beg. Beg for Tableau Stash.
Yeah.
Yeah,
stickers.
Yeah, free stickers. There's loads of really great ones as well that I think we can like put in, so they're like getting exec buy-in and the how to get senior people to, you know, use reports and stuff and educate and train stakeholders. I think we can pull those all together to get some really good sessions in the calendar.
Failures, that's really interesting, isn't it? You know, I've just given a sort of corporate side presentation about how to do things that work, but you never really hear about failures, do you? So that could be an interesting one for the future. Obviously, I never failed, but I hear others do.
Yes.
Not true.
No, this is really, really, really good to see. Great that everyone's got so many ideas. So I can leave the Menti running, so if you kind of have any ideas later on, you'll be able to just come back and type them in. I think it will only be live for a few more hours. But really keen for people to feel like they can still feed through. And obviously, if you don't come up with them now, feel free to message us on like LinkedIn or Twitter or wherever, and we can add them to the kind of list of ideas. And also, again, as I said, if you've got a really good example that you would like to share of one of these things, that would also be great to hear about as well.
And as we said earlier, this was our first session, so we are open to suggestions on how often we run them, whether the Zoom worked well for people, or if people have other suggestions about what they would like to see and how they would like us to run these sessions.
But I guess apart from that, I don't think there's anything really left. Do we have any more questions, Amy? Do you want to?
No more questions.
Cool. So.
All right. Well, thank you very much, everyone. Yeah, thank you. So people are leaving for the next hour, which is fair enough. But yeah, thanks again, and thanks to Charlotte and Amy for all the great ideas around this. It feels like it's gone really well. We've met some great people. We've got some great ideas, and we will catch up with you again